have
Sure.
this. Okay.
Okay.
So you were saying most people.
Okay. I was going to say most people have probably seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And if you were to ask people, we have these meetings called charrettes, which are meetings with clients in order to figure out what we're going to do with the project. And I say, what do you think the theme of It's a Wonderful Life is? And they say, I'll say, well, of course, it's right at the very end where he says, no one, what is it? No one is a failure who has friends, because that's what Capra has the character say at the end of his movie. But that's not actually the theme of It's a Wonderful Life. If you watch the movie carefully, the theme can be found in the change the character goes through. It's all about the character. The classic one is A Christmas Carol. The change that Scrooge makes goes from being a bitter, cynical misanthrope to being a kind and benevolent friend of mankind. Massive, wonderful change. Well, the change in It's a Wonderful Life that George Bailey goes through isn't like it's not about friends. If you see George's character, he's about to throw himself off the bridge because he thinks his life has no value and it doesn't make any difference if he's there. Then, of course, Clarence the Angel shows him what the world would be like without him. And he's shocked to discover all of the impacts he's had on these various people's lives, including his beloved wife. And so at the end, he's saying, please let me live, please let me live, please let me live. And he wakes up and in fact, he's alive. And then he's so giddy about this. There's a shot of him running down the street yelling, I'm going to jail, isn't it wonderful? So the actual theme of It's a Wonderful Life is no man is a failure who makes a friend of himself. The change in George is that, unlike Scrooge, who makes a complete character change, George's character doesn't change, but his own perception of himself changes. He stops seeing himself as being insignificant, and he starts seeing himself as someone who is having a positive impact on just about everyone he meets. And he knows from now on that's going to be the way he is in the world. You could lose the last scene of him getting saved by all these people coming to his home, and it'd still be a beautiful and profound movie, because if George goes to jail, he's going to be a positive influence on every single person he meets in jail. It's that transformation that's the most important thing. Anyway, so
yeah, that's a great perspective. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I didn't until I started really studying story. I was watching a movie and go, no, wait a minute here. It's okay. Yeah, it's the great thing about studying stories and storytelling is it's a lifetime pursuit and you can never master it. You can learn a lot about it and you can use it, but it's like playing a musical instrument. You'll never reach perfection. Nobody will ever have everything totally figured out. So in that way, it's like a Zen koan that you get to contemplate every single day.
And Bill, I don't know what you were. Maybe I should ask what you're thinking when you hear story instead of what I think of for you.
I could listen to Rich for hours. I love hearing his perspective, his life journey, his stories, and I can see why he's a great author. And he talked about how he creates these tours for the Jameson Brewery, et cetera, et cetera. And, through Wayne's help, we're trying to accomplish that through our marketing department at Utility Keystone. Is they ask you answer what's most important to the customer, what's most important to the reader, et cetera. And that's how you tailor your marketing message or your story, is not how great we are, but what does the customer want to find? What do they want to learn? How can we help them? So your book, I read it on a plane, and then I sent it to my 3 nephews and my 2 sons through Amazon. And I send random gifts through Amazon. I don't tell them who it's from. They think it's from somebody else in our text group, so he gets the credit, but I sent him that book to them because I liked your book so much. And the 3 takeaways were God, honesty, and forgiveness. And I need to reread the book because I forget a lot. But those 3 things helped me get back on a devotional. So I look at the YouVersion app for the Bible, and then create some devotionals. And I invite my 3 nephews and my 2 sons, and we go through that. And then I just send them $100 for finishing it. And they go, "Why do you do that?" They said, "Well, you guys are broke because they're all 4 of them are in college." And I said, "You guys earned it, and I don't feel like giving you money, but you did something, and here's the gift that you get for it." So I just want to hear more stories from Rich. I find it very interesting, and I've never been in the opportunity with a author who actually wrote a book that I read. So this is pretty cool, Wayne. And I should have read. I just signed up for Wayne's books. I don't even know what the topic is. I usually read the stuff that he gives me, but I had no idea you were going to be on this call. So thanks for spending your time with us. It's pretty cool.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm honored to meet somebody who so embodies the spirit of generosity. You know, you're someone that's one of the most noble and best of all virtues. You know, I mean, sharing your books, sharing your money with people who need it. You know, that's wonderful. Yes, good for you. Let me tell you a story kind of like about what I do, because it has something to do with what you said about your business is absolutely about, you know, it's not, if you tell your customers how great you are, they'll turn off. But if you find out, you know, if you can make it about them, that's the key. You know, we did a job about this would be about 4 years ago for the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team. Bud Selig, who was the owner of the Brewers, who was also the commissioner of baseball for quite a while, was retiring. And they wanted to do a tribute to Bud in the stadium. They wanted to have a little purpose-built theater that would hold about 20 people. The show would last about 10 minutes. And, you know, as with all our shows, this is something that if they're going to spend the $5, $6, $7 million, they want it to be able to run for 10, 15 years. You know, that's a pretty, you know, how many movies do you really want to rewatch? So this one has to be a thing where every time people come to the stadium, it has to be they have to take away what we call an emotional souvenir, where they basically say, I felt so good after seeing that show, I want to go in and see it again. So the challenge was, how do you do a show about Bud Selig? People even in Milwaukee felt somewhat ambivalent about him because he was the man who canceled the 1994 baseball season when the owners got in a row with the players. He did bring the team back to Milwaukee, and he did help build the stadium. So we said, okay. And they said, here's the show we would do. And, you know, it's like Bud was born this day, and then he got a car dealership, and he made a lot of money. And then he bought the team, and, you know, and he's got a great family and so on and so forth. It was a show about Bud. And we said, okay, we're going to take what you've given us, and we're going to make this show about the fans. Now, the show takes place in a theater in Miller Park. So we know the guests most likely are going to be families who are there to enjoy a baseball game together. And they're going to do that because usually the parent was usually brought to a baseball game by her parent as a child. And they have these wonderful memories about, you know, what it's like to be in a ballpark on a summer night, enjoying it together. And they want their kids to have that. So the show we did, it was hosted by Bob Uecker, who is the wonderful, wonderful baseball announcer, who is, you know, just a great guy. So the show we did begins with not with Bud, but a montage of fans enjoying themselves at a baseball game, reaching for a foul ball, hugging each other, cheering after a home run. And the euchre says, is there anything better in the world than coming to Miller Park on a warm summer evening and enjoying a baseball game together with your family, having fun, making memories that will last you for a lifetime? It's like, isn't it great we have this place to come to have this experience? Well, we have this place because of one man, Bud Selig. Okay, now we see Bud, and Bud says, boy, you know something? I'll never forget the first time my mother brought me to the ballpark to see the old Milwaukee Brewers minor league team. And we're seeing footage, right? I haven't seen him yet at all. We're seeing footage of the Milwaukee Brewers back in the 1940s. So I can still remember everything. I can remember seeing the grass. I remember hearing the players as they chatted each other up on the field. I remember having a hot dog. It was so great, And then, when I got to be like in my 20s, then the Boston Braves moved to Milwaukee. And so we're about 4 minutes into a 10-minute thing, and all we've heard about is how great it is to be a fan. And now we know Bud was a fan too. Bud's like us. He's just a guy who loves baseball, and then he talks about how, so the plot beats are Bud becomes a huge Milwaukee Braves fan. The Braves had a great team in the 50s with Hank Aaron, Eddie Matthews, Lou Burdett. But then in 1965, some out-of-towners swoop in, buy the Braves, and move them to Atlanta. At this point, Bud is a car dealer. Bud says, Milwaukee baseball fans are the greatest fans in the world. We're the smallest market, and we supported the Braves, loyally. And now the team was gone. Well, this is, as a fan, this was not good. I made it my business to try to I'm going to bring baseball back to Milwaukee. And then there's what he did to do that, and he ended up buying the Seattle Pilots and moving him back. Now, what we see is all of the great moments of the first 15 years of the Brewers, the Harvey Wallbanger team, and we see, and once again, we're seeing fans loving it. We're seeing, said, boy, when we brought that team back, the whole city of Milwaukee came together. It was like the circus was back in town. It was so great to be able to walk down the street and see people enjoying themselves and talking about last night's game or whatever. And where this is going, so the what I call the second act climax is Major League Baseball tells the Brewers that unless they get a new stadium, they're going to move the team somewhere else. And then Bud says, it's like I was going to move heaven and earth in order to make sure that didn't happen. And there's this horrendous fight, and he has to go to the city council, and there are 3 votes, 16-15, and only on the 3rd vote did he get the vote he needed to get the funding to build the stadium. And then euchre, so then the stadium, we see the stadium being built in kind of a quick montage. And then we come back to fans, just like the ones in the theater. And we hear Bud say, it's like, when I can walk around this stadium on a beautiful, warm summer night, and I can see all of these families having this great time, I think back on that moment with my mom. And I think back of how much baseball has meant to me. And I think back of all of the great memories that are being made right here tonight that people will remember the rest of their lives. And that's made everything I did worth it. So, that is an example of how we or I use storytelling to make it about the guest, as opposed to it's not about Bud, it's not about the Brewers, it's not about the stadium. The message is we do all this for you. People who see that show come out, we always say, what's the change? What's the change in the guest? The change in the guest there is feeling ambivalent about Bud, to coming out feeling really deeply grateful to him for creating this place where they could have these memories they're going to create today watching this game. And when their kids are grown, they're going to think back on those times and go, boy, wasn't that, remember that time we went to that game? Oh man, was that fun. So anyway, that's sort of an application of what I do when it works right.
And Bill's, the way I see Bill and Brian, his brother, and his father and mom started it, and that his family owned trailer dealership. There's multiple stories going on there, but one of the stories is really like the people who carry freight in our country are heroes. And
Sure.
and then Bill, I almost picture you should have the American Museum of Trailers or something, because trailers are underappreciated. It's always the tractors, the part up front with the diesel engine that gets, or whatever future hydrogen engine or whatever it is, but that always gets all the press and that's kind of the sexy part of it. But the trailer, I've learned so much from Bill about, like, Bill knows these trailers, reefers, and how thick the decking is, the floorboards, and then they've got these multiple different pieces to the dealership where somebody could get they buy the trailer brand new, they can trade it in, they can get it fixed up if it's in a collision, and they've got this great team of tradespeople that are, you know, blue collar, hardworking people, and the dealership actually really cares about them and tries to make the best within what you can pay. Just like AIDA has a business model, you can't, in today's world, you can't pay people $30 an hour to do care, even though they probably should get that, but there's constraints on the business owner. But
Sure.
yeah, there's a lot to what you're talking about, the story and Bob Euchre, and that we could use, Rich. So it's lots of application.
Sure. Yeah. If you were to give me the assignment of doing the trailer museum, you know, it would be all about, it'd be 100% about what's on the trailer that brings joy to people that they wouldn't have if there were no trailers. In other words, we have to have trailers and trucks so we can deliver Christmas presents to people, so people can get the medicine they need, so that people can bring the things that bring them joy in their own lives. It's a service, and it's like you don't think about the trailer, but without the trailer, there would be less joy in your life. And then after you establish, oh, I see, it's like change people's minds about what a trailer actually does. Then you release them into the museum and they look at trailers a different way. So anyway, that's a way to think about it. That's just off the top of my head. So.
Quick aside, it's interesting. Pete Koch is my strength coach, and he does things within our community. And he was, if you ever watched the movie Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood, he was a great big guy named Swede, and he got in a fight with Clint Eastwood. And now he's a strength coach and does videos on LinkedIn. But he recently did a series of commercials for Ford Motor Company where he's a truck driver hauling a trailer full of Ford vehicles to bring joy, and he's Santa Claus because he's got a white beard. And I don't know if you caught that, Bill, but it's neat to know that, like, Santa Claus in the Ford commercial, and he's trucking happiness and joy in the form of Ford vehicles. Rich, could you this is the part I want to get a little bit of time. So the $1 Million Sticky Note,
Sure.
it's such a great story, and it's interesting. I got 2 copies. I buy 50 and want to give it out. Bill
Right.
gets a copy and he wants to send 3 or 4 out to people that are important in his life. So the book you've written here, it's not yet as widespread as a Christmas Carol, but it has some of the same. It's like that. It's a story that can help us. We step into it and we can access these 3 principles that are on the sticky note. So thank you for writing about this, and God, honesty, forgiveness. Could you just tell us a bit, how did I know, because you shared with me this story of how you stored those 3 principles for quite some time, and then diligently you put the work in to write the book. Can you just take us through that?
Sure. Yeah, this is about, oh boy, it was more than 20 years ago. I know that. I was driving around listening to National Public Radio, and this a report came on National Public Radio, a story came on, and the story was about a woman who had written a book. She had interviewed 400 psychiatrists and psychologists, and about what worked and what didn't work in their practices. And, okay, this is kind of an interesting story. And what the woman said is, it's really funny. All 400 of them basically told me some version of the same thing without communicating with one another or knowing each other. They all said that they started out being advocates of a certain discipline, like I'm a Jungian, I'm a Freudian, blah, 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 And then they said, after 2 or 3 years of pursuing this, they noticed that they were abandoning the things didn't work, and they were kind of moving towards the things that did work. And he said, the three things that all of them reported to me worked were, first, God. That is, in this context, there is some part of the organism, what's the right word? There's some force in the universe that's organizing and that makes sense and that is benevolent. So in other words, if they can, the first thing that if they need to move towards the idea that life isn't just this plot against them or this completely random experience where, some terrible blow could happen to them for no good reason at all. So that's number one. The second one is honesty. This is a real key one, because in order to get well, you have to be honest with yourself at such a deep and compelling level that it's sometimes shocking and can be harrowing. But if you can tell the truth about yourself, then you can start to heal, because then you can, that leads to then being able to acknowledge the good things about yourself as well. And you can build on those good things. And then finally, forgiveness, of which the most important aspect is self-forgiveness, because people dig themselves in such a deep hole that they think of themselves as being sort of unforgivable, but nobody's unforgivable, even Scrooge, even Ebenezer Scrooge isn't unforgivable. So he said, they said those three things are the key to healing people. If people can believe there is a benevolent organizing principle in the world, if they can be honest with each other in a way that's deeply uncomfortable, and if they can find the compassion in themselves to forgive themselves, then there is almost a 100% chance those people can heal themselves. And if they won't be honest and they can't believe there's some benevolent organizing principle and they can't forgive themselves, then that bodes very badly for their spiritual and mental health. So I'm driving along and I'm thinking, did I just hear the secret of life here? I mean, that seems, and then of course it's like, and now the weather, now we've given you everything. And now we're going to move on to a story about the new raccoon that was born in the zoo, So I actually, once again, pulled over to the side of the road, doesn't happen very often, and wrote those three words down: God, honesty, and forgiveness. And for, I used those, I made a little 3x5 card and carried my wallet. And whenever I would start to get off track, I'd look at that and I'd say, okay, what needs to be done here? What's happening? Am I being honest with myself about that? I'm really angry with this person. Can I forgive that person and forgive myself for being affected by it, even when I shouldn't? Can I proceed from the premise that there's a benevolent organizing principle in the universe? Well, I woke up this morning, there was air to breathe, there was food in my refrigerator, there was water coming out of my tap, there is sunshine, the universe appears to be supporting me in a lot of really important ways. And there's, ways of finding spiritual enlightenment at my fingertips if I just look for it. So I said, how do I craft this into some kind of short, pithy narrative that has the power of my favorite narratives like It's a Wonderful Life and Christmas Carol. So, and what it's about is, so the goal of the narrative was create a story about someone who is so in despair that they're about to end their lives, like George Bailey, someone who considers himself irredeemable, like Ebenezer Scrooge. Then have that person have an encounter. The encounter in It's a Wonderful Life is, of course, like a miraculous encounter. But what if, in my case, it's a kind of a mysterious organization made up of people who have had this life-transforming experience, and take this person on a journey. Like, I studied deeply all of the transformational stories that I love. How, I really took them apart. How did this work? And then I was able to kind of backward engineer the narrative that I wanted. So this person, encounters this force. There's a lot of cynicism that comes into play. He doesn't think it's going to work. And the key to it is when the money back guarantee comes in, because then he's, I really don't have anything to lose by doing this. And, so he does this ridiculous thing, pays $1 million for this sticky note. And it's the paying of the money that forces him to take the task seriously enough to cause him to, have the second meeting with the woman in Central Park that takes him to the place he needs to go, to have the George Bailey experience where he's able to look back on his life, see, he's able to have compassion for himself in a way that allows him to forgive himself. There's a series of dominoes that have fallen that have led him in a certain direction. But after the second encounter, he looks around at another key is, of course, the Einstein thing, the benevolent force in the universe. And all of that falls away. And rather than walk through his life telling himself the negative narrative, oh, you're a piece of scum, you're an asshole, oh my God, your daughter hates you, all of that falls away. And his eyes open, and he's able to see the world the way it is, which is illuminated. It's a wonder, it's a miracle. Every day we walk around in this miracle. And he looks up and it's snowing, and then he walks into the church and he hears that beautiful piece of music. And that's George Bailey at the end, running down the street screaming, "I'm going to jail, isn't it wonderful?" And then he calls his daughter, and he realizes that his whole narrative he had built up in his head about she'd never talk to him again, she was waiting for his phone call. She was eager for him to contact her. And so, what he couldn't get her forgiveness until he forgave himself. So it was hearing that story, doing the work of studying those kind of narratives and looking for narratives like that. And then that's how I built it brick by brick, essentially. And my goal, I don't consider myself in any way an exalted master of literary art. I'm just a guy who took all this stuff and took 20 years to cobble this thing together. But I'm really happy I did it. I'm thrilled that people are getting, I don't feel like I'm communicating like the Steve Chandler thing. I don't feel like I'm throwing bolts of wisdom down from Mount Olympus. I'm just sharing something wonderful that gave me value so other people could have value. The people who have changed my life are all usually pretty modest people who basically said, here's something that really helped me out. I'd like to share it with you. That's sort of what I'm doing here.
Super. Thanks for that. I put something in the chat. I want to give everybody a chance and to ask a question or to share something that was impactful from the book. Whatever, these discussions always go where they should go, has been my experience. And Dan, you haven't had a chance to interact yet, so I'm going to give you a shot first.
I really liked the book because it was very timely, very, very timely, not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence anyway. Because it speaks very clearly to where I am in my life right now, things that I've been going through in my own life right now. I grew up evangelical Christian, and over the past 6 or 8 months, I have been deconstructing my faith in terms of realizing that what I was raised with at this point in history is dysfunctional and unhealthy, in my opinion. And so the whole idea that God has a plan for us, every evangelical believes that. Every evangelical stresses themselves out trying to find it. And I mean, as a college student, goodness, that was the big thing. What's God's will for my life? What's he want me to do? And you just freak out. Taking the pressure off. You're not supposed to know.
Exactly.
You're not supposed to know. Don't freak out about it. Figure out what you're made for and go do that thing. And then honesty. That whole idea that shadow boxing, nightmare world of anger and fear of being rejected, fear of not getting it right, fear of being just so, and following rules. And it's not about that. It's not about rules. It's about living life and forgiving yourself, letting go of those things and allowing yourself to have the freedom to explore and live. And there's no rejection in that. There's nothing wrong with that. And then forgiving yourself for all the time you may have wasted, or for the stress you've caused yourself, or what have you. And so it was very timely for me. As a life coach, though, I look at this and I can apply this to my work with my clients. I mean, this is right up the alley of some of the things that I do with my clients, and talk about their limiting beliefs and, those things that they've been living, those ways they've been living that are dysfunctional and not helpful, and being able to be honest with themselves and then forgive themselves and realize that the world is out there. It's benevolent, it's good for you, and things can go well. So I mean, the only thing I marked in the book were those 3 places where I felt like were the crux of each step. And it was really transformative for me. It was really helpful because it gave me a new way to think about things, and new talking points, I guess you'd say. Now, what I like about the idea of story then is I'm thinking about my own life, the story that I'm telling, and then how can I use that to challenge and encourage clients? What's the story you're telling? Do you like the story you're telling? Is it coming out the way you want? What's the emotional impact that you're wanting to have with the story of your life? Do you know how to change it? Because everybody is impacted by story in some way or another. Everyone is impacted by story. And so to tie that into our lives, that we're writing a story with our lives, can be really impactful and helpful, and just another tool, another way for people to look at where they're at and what they want to create with their life. So it was really helpful. I liked it a lot.
Oh, thank you. As I'm hearing what you're telling me, you embody certainly number 2 of the 3 things, which is that what I'm hearing, I can imagine how tough it is to go back through your life and to have that you built your life on the bedrock of this evangelical faith, and to the courage it would take to go back through that, just to take the glimmering you have that maybe this isn't leading me in the right direction, and then to go deeply into it, and the grief you must experience about thinking that, but to be able to do that work is what gives you the ability to, you've deconstructed your own narrative and put it back together in a way that, you embody that true Christian virtue of wanting to help others. You're coming from the coaching business. You found a truer and a place with more integrity in order to do that.
It's not about rules. It's about relationship.
Yeah.
With people and with the world. And yes, it is. I mean, it's a slippery slope. You ask one question and the sweater begins to unravel and you start asking questions of everything. And just being okay with being comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's been a thing I've learned, is you got to learn in business, in coaching, whatever, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that is where growth happens.
Right. That will take you to the place you need to be.
Right.
And once you can do that and practice it more and more, that makes you powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That you can come from a place of honesty and integrity, and that's everything.
And I think what's the gift in this is, if we can, as individuals, get really clear about the honesty and get really clear about forgiveness and get really clear about this, that's going to change us internally. That's going to change who we are and how we approach the world. And the gift is that then that will be reflected to the people around us, and hopefully will cause them to say, I want that. How do I get that? What's new there?
Right.
And that's really cool. And that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I want to live my life in such a way that clients and potential clients go, man, how can I have what he has?
Right. Well, you're getting that. It sounds like the journey you've taken so far is delivering you to that place. That's
yeah, it is. It is.
Good. Well, you can when you think about the book, thank that woman 20 years ago at National Public Radio who did that story, because I just shared that wisdom, and it's actually not even her wisdom. It's the true wisdom of all those psychologists who have discovered intuitively over what works. Those three things work. I just wanted to create a narrative that made those things important to people. And so, anyway, yeah, well, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Aida, and we have another guest here. I see. Aida and Bill, either a question for Rich or comment on the book.
I guess I had a quick question. Rich, in the book, the line that the character finds on that notepad or that napkin, don't do it. What if you're wrong? What made you write that specific line? What if you're wrong? Did that come from anything, or just a line?
It's just part of the narrative strategy of the interesting thing about having a character like the the hero of the book is that it only works excuse me, if there's some complexity in the narrative. He kind of he's decided he's going to kill himself, and it's taken him a long time and a lot of agony in order to do that. And so there's a bit of oh, now I got to reconsider that, and it's kind of being tugged in two directions. So I just wanted to make it as hard as possible for the character to make the right choice, because it's oftentimes, well, it's like the questioning your evangelical background. We'd rather not go there. Alcoholics would rather not say, I'm an alcoholic. It's just easier to go and have the drink, and to really to go to that. So anyway, it's just part of my narrative strategy to try to make it as hard and people, so people could relate to the character, because we're all like that. As my boss always says, nobody likes change except a baby with a dirty diaper, And it's so anyway, yeah, that's.
Is there a question behind that question, Aida?
Well, I often think in that term, you know, when I'm trying to make a decision, I really never, I don't have strong feelings about much. I always kind of factor in my head, I could be wrong either way. So I'm always open to new ideas. And, you know, I think when you see people having arguments on social media, or, you know, people are so passionate, and I just don't know that I have a topic that I feel that passionate about to really have an argument with somebody about any particular topic. And I always think to myself, what if I'm wrong? I could be wrong. My point could be proven wrong later on. So when you wrote that, I wondered if you had something in mind about that specific line. But yeah, I think about that a lot. I could always be wrong. So I'm always open to new ideas and listening to people's point of views. So that's where I was going with that one.
Okay. Well, when I think about your life and what you do, the thing that comes to me is that when you help somebody in the way that you help them, I think back of my father in that hospice care center. And, you know, the worker that helped my father caused him, in the most dire circumstance imaginable, to be comforted and to be happy. And when I talked to him, I was comforted and I was happy. And I have a daughter who's now 26 years old. And I'm so moved by the compassion of that helper of that time that I'm able to be sort of calm and wise and compassionate with my daughter. The good that you're doing in your own life will ripple through generations. You know, it's not just comforting the person in the moment. It's, you know, we all, of course, it works the other way too. If you do something, you know, malicious or mean or whatever, that can cause the ripples going in the other direction. But, you know, you should acknowledge yourself every single day for getting up and choosing what you're doing and the way that you do it, because that's powerful in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rich, thank you.
Wow. And all of your people should get up every day and acknowledge that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rich, I was curious. Rich, I was curious, you know, when did the outline of the book get in your head, and how long ago was that, and how long did it take you to write it? And I'm just interested in the construction of how it all came about.
Sure. I would say it's kind of funny in a way. I have this book of wisdom that I keep. I just sent Dwayne a copy actually, that had those 3 words in it. And I'm always looking for interesting stories that I feel are worthy in the world. So now it's let's say it's March of 2020. COVID has now hit, and suddenly I'm working from home, and I've got 2 extra hours a day because I'm not commuting to and from Burbank. And this gives me an opportunity to, you know, something, I've got all this time. I've always wanted to try something like this. And it's been turning over in my mind for years about how I would do this. And I just said, okay, you know something, I wrote the there's a wonderful guy named Stephen Pressfield. He wrote a book called The War of Art. And one of his premises is you can write a sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper is exactly the right size to write the outline for any book. 3 acts, what it's about, beginning, middle, and end. So in probably April of 2020, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see if I can do this. So I wrote the outline, the 1-page outline. And, you know, then probably took me about 2 weeks to write a first draft. Then I, of course, put it in a drawer for a couple of months. And then I brought it out again, looked at it with fresh eyes, and did about another week of revisions. You know, it's funny, I have a relationship with Maurice Bassett because I'm such a Steve Chandler fan. He usually sends me Steve's books. And I had no idea that this was worth publishing. I sent it to Maurice Bassett and I said, I know you publish books like that. I'd just like you to give me opinion if you think this thing is worth anything. And he read it and he said, not only do I think it's worth something, I'd love to publish it. I was actually shocked because I've been messing around with various book projects for quite a while. I can see on my Amazon page, there's a novel called The Atomic Bombshell, which pretends to be this wild tell-all autobiography of this movie star over a period of 40 years. And that book took me several years to write, and has sold about 8 copies. But it was well worth it because I taught myself how to write and how to write that specific book. So the answer is, I spent years writing that novel and nobody wants to read it. And I took about overall total, probably a month, maybe less, to write this thing. But my instincts as a writer have taught me, when I was writing 60-second radio commercials, people used to really like, they would be shocked by how quickly I could write a 60-second radio commercial. But I could write a good spot that would win an award in like 5 minutes. But if you ask me how long, if you were to ask me how long it took to write Sticky Note, I would say 70 years. I had to have every single life experience and all of my work in studying storytelling and all of my work in compiling, things to heal my own life. It took all of that to get to the point where I knew enough how to be simple. So that's my way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Getting close to the end. We have about 7 minutes. It's been great. Anybody else? Questions, comments, thoughts, insight you got from the book? Anything?
Well, that's okay. I'm absolutely thrilled that you would ask me to do this. I'm deeply honored that you would take 90 minutes of your day in order to spend them with me so we could talk about this. And, as I said, this is just something I'm sharing, some wisdom that somebody else gave me. This is not something I came up with, but it's, basically things that work in the world. And I would welcome you to share it with other people in the form of the book or just in the form of sitting down with somebody and who is having a crisis and talking them through it. Because those 3 things will help them.
I would just throw in there, the Lincoln Memorial is fantastic. It's been several years since I was there, but it's pretty amazing. Some very powerful, moving images. Really, really well done.
Oh, thank you so much.
Enjoyed it a lot.
I got to spend 5 years with Abe Lincoln, and I've enjoyed every single moment. He's an amazing person. The more you read about him, the more astonishing he is. And it's because, it's like he is the uncommon common man. He's us. He's just decided every branch in the road, he took the right branch. He always went deeper into himself and found his humanity. You talk about having to face your evangelical past. Well, Lincoln grew up in a white family in Kentucky, and he saw a slave auction when he was in his early 30s, and it so shocked him. The slave auction was the father was being sold off, and the mother was being sold off with her kids, being separated. And he was so gobsmacked by that it changed. That was his life-changing moment, and at every single point in his political career, it would have been easier not to talk about that thing. But yet, and because of that, in 1858, Lincoln said that we're going to have slavery for the next 100 years. And 10 years later, the amendment was passed to ban slavery. That's the power of someone willfully doing the right thing can have. That's why that story has power, because people go through that place and they think, he isn't any different from me, really. I could, if I decided to be courageous in the way he was, I could have that kind of impact in the world. There's absolutely no reason why not. So anyway, yeah, I'm very happy you liked it.
Great way to end it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And Rich, thanks for writing the book.
Sure.
We appreciate it. God, honesty, and forgiveness on a sticky note.
Well, good.
We appreciate it. So
Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
my pleasure. Bye.
Thanks, Rick. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You bet.
Take care.
Okay.